Good morning, everybody. It is wonderful to have you here with us today. So I'm really excited about today's Q&A because we have got Jenny Robson with us. And Jenny, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Hi, my name's Jenny. I'm the founder of Roots and Branches Limited, and we help UK SMEs across all sectors to export to anywhere in the world. And I'm also I've been appointed as an Enterprise Nation Brexit advisor. So I'm helping companies to understand how Brexit might impact upon their ability to import and export. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Which is fantastic because I know that this has been a topic of conversation in the group, and there are a lot of people who are concerned about Brexit, not sure what impact it's going to have on them, especially for those of you who import from the EU and those of you who have customers who are in the EU. So I'm really excited to have Jenny, that Jenny's agreed to come and talk to us today and to answer any questions that we might have. So we're going to talk through a general overview of Brexit, what that might mean. If you've got any questions, do just pop them below, and we'll kind of do a roundup at the end if there have been any questions. So let's get started then. So Jenny, what we talked about was just if you put yourselves in the shoes of a small business that imports or exports to the EU, what right now should people be thinking about?
So Brexit is going to affect all areas of the business. So I would say that particularly for exporters, you need to be thinking about your human resources, your supply chain, your logistics and distribution channels, your finances, because that could be impacted upon too, and your compliance is really important. And there's likely to be changes in particularly the human resources and the compliance areas that will impact on how you do business, how long it takes, and its cost. So what we're suggesting businesses do at the moment is some scenario planning that looks at how their current business is and how it might prepare should X, Y, or Z happen. So if tomorrow the customs clearance process takes 5 days, what impact would that have on your business? What impact would that have on your suppliers' businesses? And what impact would that have on whether or not you've got alternative suppliers in place or alternative ways of getting existing products to customers faster? Have you already stockpiled overseas so can distribute from the mainland, or have you already stockpiled in the UK and so aren't waiting for stock to come to you to then have something else done to it to then re-export? So there's more questions than there is answers, unfortunately, at the moment. And I think that's what's quite overwhelming for certainly all the businesses I'm speaking to. And I know that that's what Catherine's mentioned to me as well. If you import products from the EU at the moment, I would suggest, if you're able to and if finances permit, stockpiling at least enough to get you through a 2 to 3 week period, ideally a month. Because there's going to be an uncertain first month where the new legislation kicks in and the old legislation system stops, and everybody's getting used to it, including the customs officials. And there's going to have to be more customs facilities built and put into place. So until the government's worked out its own system and processes, exporters and importers can expect delays. So if you already have a product ready to go, either within your own distribution centres in the UK, or if you're exporting to the EU with distributors overseas, if you can stockpile for them as well, so they hold more stock than they normally would, they can continue to distribute on your behalf for that first month without it being too much disruption to end customers. But I'd also be thinking about how you marketing to your customers, starting to tell them that they can expect delays, that things will take slightly longer, that you are still offering the same level of quality of product as before and at the same price, perhaps, or you may have to adjust your prices. But you are doing everything you possibly can to make sure that they get their product on time, but that on time might mean 5 days now instead of 3 days, or it's still uncertain to us how many days it will actually be. But I've done a survey of how long it takes for customs clearance around the world in about 91 markets, and right. The average varies between, well, the number of days varies between 1 day in places like Singapore, or less than a day in places like Singapore, to about 12 days in remote parts of the world, or war zones, or parts of Africa. Right. I think we can typically suggest that customs clearance, if we had to put physical borders into the UK and things had to be physically checked, would take between 3 and 5 days, because that is about the average of like-for-like countries. Okay. We would want to remain as competitive as possible as the British nation, so we're unlikely to put up with more than a week. It's not going to be viable, so it's more like.
And what is it currently? It's sort of what, 48 hours, isn't it, or less than?
48 hours. Some sectors less than, because not everything is checked at the moment. So because it doesn't have to be checked into the EU, right. A lot of things are cleared without each individual pallet being opened and checked. But physical checks might now have to happen for every single thing that goes through, which
so in terms of, sorry, Jenny, so just to kind of recap then, so in terms of scenario planning, the first one then that you have to tackle for sure is to expect your customs clearance time for the first month to be disrupted, who knows how long, because it's going to be an adjustment period. So if you can possibly stockpile for the first month, then that would be ideal. The second thing then, scenario that you need to work through, is that your customs clearance overall, even when we go back to business as usual, is going to go from potentially 24 to 48 hours up to, but probably not exceeding 7 days.
Yeah.
So you're going to, right, so you're going to have to kind of work through the scenario where your lead times from your EU suppliers is going to be possibly up to a week longer than previously. And then that also therefore means you've got to have a communication scenario where you're starting to talk to your customers and pre-warning them that from now on, you're going to work to minimize disruption, but it's likely that you are going to have a longer time period than they're maybe used to getting from you. Is that a fair summary?
That's a fair summary. And also the I'd add on to that is the fourth is therefore you'll need to put financial channels in place to facilitate you being able to do that, because you will know by going through this scenario for your business whether, yes, I can currently cope with it being a 2-day delay, but as soon as it's a 3-day delay, my business isn't viable. So you'll need to work out the sort of validity point at where this stretches you beyond your ability to continue, so that then you can either raise finance to bridge the gap or change the business model to do something else that is more viable under the new circumstances and system. Because
so that might be finding another supplier.
Yeah, it could be changing your supplier so that you can get products in at a cheaper cost, or it could be distributing from a different part of Europe so that you're not having to clear UK customs in the same way at the same point in the process. You might clear in bulk earlier and then distribute in small amounts from a European destination. Or you could combine clearance with other companies. There's all sorts of ways around it that we could help advise on. But the route to market is probably likely to differ for companies exporting post-Brexit than pre-Brexit.
Okay. So we're talking. So if we stick maybe with the importers for now, and then we'll talk about exporters afterwards, if that's okay. So importers, it's going to have to be that you longer time period, need to stockpile, etc. Just talk us through in very sort of basic terms the whole tariff situation, because that at the moment we don't have tariffs from the EU, but then going forward, what we don't know really at the moment is what kind of tariffs there will be. But do we have a sense yet of what they could be?
So the only sense that we've got from the government at the moment is that if they can't reach an agreement with the EU as it currently stands, then it's likely that we'd revert to WTO rules and regulations, which means that each individual country could introduce their own protective tariffs in certain sectors to protect their own industries and goods. So the only way to get a clue on what they might look like is to look at those individual countries' tariffs for non-EU countries at the moment.
Right.
And so if they're stopping this from Brazil, are they likely to apply the same rule to me from the UK post-Brexit? So that's the kind of research that we've been doing at the moment to try and map out what it might look like as a sort of best guess. I mean, obviously, we're hoping that the government reaches a better level of scenario than that and can still trade with the EU as a bloc without individual markets rules applied and individual tariffs applied. And I think that is behind the scenes what the civil servants are working towards. But obviously, the British public voted for Brexit and don't want to be too closely linked to EU rules and have that imposed on us for too much longer. So there's a political balance to be struck. But I think it's within sort of everybody's interest really to try and to have a system that's as protective of business transactions continuing along the same lines as they currently do, because it's not only going to disrupt British business, it's also going to disrupt European business. So it's in their interest as well to have as little disruption as possible. So I don't think we're suddenly going to see enormous tariffs placed across lots of industries. There might be some goods and services that are protected because that country's particularly strong in that area. So I think that's where it's more likely to affect. So unless your industry is in something really niche, I wouldn't be as worried about tariffs as some of the other elements of the Brexit discussion.
Okay, well, that's interesting. But in terms of scenario planning then, so if we kind of recap again, if you're somebody who's importing from the EU, so you would do your scenario about your first month stockpile, you do your scenario about your viability once the customs clearance takes that much longer, you do your scenario about how you communicate with your customers, or even starting that now. And then you'd have to do a scenario where you say, right, well, let me look at the tariffs. So, for example, I know there's somebody in the group who imports food from Italy. So they would look at, presumably then, okay, the non-EU country tariff under the World Trade Organization tariffs for olive oil coming from Italy is currently X. Therefore, one of my scenarios will be to assume effectively what you're saying is kind of worst case scenario, that tariff is matched then post-Brexit, because if all negotiations about tariff levels fail, therefore this is what I would assume it would be afterwards. And therefore that's sort of another scenario that you're at least planning to understand for your own kind of peace of mind. Probably not peace of mind if we're honest, because that's going to be a tough probably number, but at least you've got the bare facts of what that looks like.
Doesn't make your business viable even when applying that tariff, then you've got a chance of making a success of importing. And I think that's sort of what we're aiming towards, is can we make our businesses viable even if all of these bad case scenarios are applied to our business and we have to be compliant, in sort of really simplistic terms. The thing to watch out for as well is the quotas, because some countries don't impose tariffs, but they impose quotas. So they'll say you can import 1,000 bottles of olive oil, but once you've reached that limit, that's it. So that would influence how much you could scale your business as well. Right.
So you've got to be aware of, so
both are applied. So I would be researching both. I'm actually trying to do that across sectors at the moment, and I'll make that research available once we've sort of compiled it. I'll pass it on to you, Catherine. But it's good to a little bit longer. But people should be doing it for their own businesses as well in their specific sector because it's good practice.
Okay. So those are the main scenarios to plan out then. Stockpiling, lead times, customer communication, tariffs and quotas. So then if we, have we missed any? Are there others that, as you mentioned, workforce?
I mentioned finance as well. Yeah. If you can get financial mechanisms in place to take some of the pressure off, then that can help you to stay viable despite some of the challenges of Brexit. So is that talking to your bank, for example? Is it as simple as that then? Or just it might be that some people get sort of export finance deals from the UK Export Finance Department, which is part of the UK government as well, and some people can secure banking finance against export orders, and import orders. So it's utilising the financial mechanisms that are available to give you the most flexibility, basically, so that your cash flow is not negatively affected. Okay. That's sort of a whole topic in its own right. So I can separately talk to individuals if required on those kind of things, so that I don't. That's good to know. So let's then flip it for a minute and talk about exporters. So you are somebody who either produces in the UK or gets goods in from somewhere else, but then some of your customers, probably online customers, for example, or other partners are actually in the EU. So what does that then look like? What's your contingency planning look like for your exporters? So you should be looking at the same sort of thing as customs clearance time. Right. That's likely to be longer, and there's likely to be more documentation required. So it's likely, therefore, to be more costly. Okay. So the sort of two biggest impacts is that it'll take longer and it'll probably cost more. Right. However, you could mitigate against some of that perhaps by exporting in bulk, and then distributing in smaller amounts from somewhere in Europe. So perhaps sending a whole container rather than individual pallets at a time, once a month, and then getting a distributor or agent in, say, the Netherlands or one of the big port areas on mainland Europe to distribute out from there in smaller pallets, so that you only have to clear the UK customs system once with the big pallet, and then send stock throughout Europe from Europe. I see. And that would be something, again, that you could help advise on in terms of if people don't have that mechanism set up currently. It would really suit people that had enough finance to send in such scale. So it's a mechanism that bigger companies will probably adopt, but it's much more challenging for a small business to adopt that strategy, because filling a pallet might be something you do in a whole month rather than a week, and filling a container might be something you do across the whole year, not in a month. So scale is definitely going to limit some people's ability to use these mechanisms. And will there be additional charges? So let's say, let's imagine you're on the smaller end of the scale and you're a e-commerce business, but you have European customers. So one of the things then you're going to be doing is talking to your customers about the longer lead times, because it will take them longer to clear out of the UK into the EU. But are you likely to also then hit tariffs the other way, so that you will have additional charges levied against you to export into the EU? So you'll have to clear UK customs, and then you'll have to clear whichever country you're landing in, their customs process as well. And any documentation or tariffs will be levied at that point also, to make sure that you can enter into that country. So there'll be two customs processes that don't exist at the moment. It normally happens, because at the moment, we can trade freely across that border, so there's no check leaving the UK and there's no check on arrival. Right. To the same extent. will now be the case. So you can expect delays on both ends.
Right. Okay.
Good news today.
But again, as you said, it's all about then scenario planning. So you have to do that work in your business, and you have to say, right, it's going to take another, 5 days to send my products out to the EU. Therefore, do I need to decide whether or not it's viable to even advertise in the or do I need to then look at growing my UK business instead? I mean, it's just so really the message I think coming across to people. What's that? Sorry.
Looking at the wider world, outside of Europe, the rest of the markets, there's an enormous amount of opportunities across Asia, across the Americas. So I think we maybe need to use it as an opportunity to start not discrediting some of the wider world that perhaps we discredited because the EU is slightly easier, but now it's not going to be. So why not take advantages of some of the other opportunities that are a bit further afield? And because those governments can see that there's a problem with Brexit and delays, they're sort of saying, okay, we can seize on that now by making it much easier to export and import into our country. So a lot of them are using this as an opportunity to get that custom that they didn't have access to before.
Okay, interesting. So that
lots of incentives to not export to the EU and to start exporting further afield as well, or import vice versa.
Very interesting. So they're almost seeing it as an opportunity to get the custom from the UK that they previously didn't have access to. So, wow, that's a really interesting idea. So we've been so fixated on Brexit as being, well, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say we, I can say I, or people that I've spoken to have been fixated on Brexit as this major issue, which, no doubt is going to cause an awful lot of disruption, but there could also be opportunities that come out of it.
Yeah, and I know we've talked a lot about physical exporting, but we also forget that we can export services. So even if you're in retail where you immediately think physical products, your skill as retailers is something that can be exported, but you often forget that. So, and especially to the wider markets beyond the EU, there's a demand to buy the British processes. How do we do retail? How do we get products to market? How do we go through the process of product development and design and IP protection? And can we package that knowledge and export that? Yes, we absolutely can. But as UK retailers, we often forget to do that. Right. So we're so consumed with exporting or importing our actual products that we forget the wealth of potential money that we sat on in the service element of what we do. So I think that that's another opportunity that's coming out of Brexit, because as people have to reinvent their business models, right, there's opportunities to make money in their existing businesses from that perspective that they could tap into now.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so I think then the summary is do we have any idea when we might actually get government guidance? When will it, and do we have any clue when we might actually get confirmation on anything to do with tariffs?
I expect it really in sort of January, because it's supposed to happen at the end of March. So they've got to give some lead time. But also we've got Christmas coming up, and things slow down around the Christmas period always. So I would sort of optimistically say January and pessimistically say right at the last minute. Okay, so it's possible that we won't get official government guidance till the last minute. So in the interim, scenario plan, what do we talk about? Lead times, stockpiling, that first month planning, customer communication, look at tariffs, look at models for what the tariffs could be, worst case scenario, decide where the business viability, and if it's not viable, what percentage of your business is at risk, and therefore what do you have to do in terms of finding different suppliers or different markets. Yeah, or what other skills and knowledge and talents are you sat on that you could be selling that you're not currently selling, like your processes and and knowledge around that. I've created Google Forms to help people scenario plan. So share the link with you. So it goes through each section of your business that we discussed. You ask the questions and work out where the gaps are. And then if you need help filling those gaps, I'm more than happy to work through that on an individual basis with companies to solve.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, if you can just tell us then, Jenny, so obviously your input has been hugely helpful, and I'm sure it's really valuable for a lot of people in the group. So just tell us a little bit more about how we can work with you further.
So you can visit my website, which is www.rootsandbranches.com. It's ROUTES, not roots the plant, because that often confuses people. And it's actually called Roots and Branches because we help with routes to market and branch offices around the world. So it's a little bit of a play on words, but one that has to be explained because I'm not actually a gardening company. I'm also on YouTube. I do a number of informative videos about different aspects of Brexit and exporting on YouTube. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is more active than my Facebook, so I suggest looking there first. I've written a book to help people navigate Brexit and export successfully. So that's called Thrive, Change the World, and that's due to be published any day now. I'm just waiting for the publisher to send me the first copy.
Amazing.
And I've just launched a course called Roots, which will be available on my website in the next couple of days, which takes you through my 7 steps to export success. So you could apply that methodology to an existing exporting business or to one that's thinking about exporting post-Brexit. It's not going to help the importers though, so that one's for the exporters only, really.
Okay, but you have got, a wealth of experience, and you're able to help people also on an individual basis as well. Yeah. So I will put all of your links below, and including the book and the course and details about you and how you can help. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I hope that has kind of cleared up some of the burning questions that people have. And if they need to know more, they know who they can turn to for help.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.